Okay, now here's what I think is going on with these hurricanes getting squashed in Hawaii. I think there's a Haarp transmitter on Oahu, just behind the big naval base there. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to zoom in on Oahu. Go to the satellite view. Okay, and this down here, Honolulu, I guess is the big naval base. I'm not too familiar at all with Hawaii, so bear with me. But if we zoom in here, we're going to see something that looks really odd. First notice it as a bunch of little stripy dots, these stripes here. So let's just keep on zooming, see what we find. Okay, now this looks very, very odd. Okay, first we have this big open grassy area, and then we have these really strange striped areas, and it's backed right up on this mountain range here. So let's go ahead and have a look at what we see. It's my contention this is a Haarp transmitter that's actually hidden to look like something else. Now these guys here, what these guys, okay, these ones here, these look more or less like the underground bunkers where they store nuclear weapons, because you have a truck track, and then here's like an underground opening, and so there's an elevator where they store nuclear weapons. And you know, these are pretty common because there's so many of those damn nukes. But if we look at some of these over here, they're made to look that way, but they're not actually the same structure. Like over up by this mountain here. Furthermore, if you're storing nukes underground, you really want to have a good strong fence. And these ones up by the mountain here don't seem to have any fence around them. So that's a strange thing. Okay, now these are a mystery. But these are not the main thing that I want to show you. These are just some strange looking, like little mounds or something, with a little possibly elevator going down. Okay, so let me show you again what's over here. This is the main topic, because this is no doubt some kind of very unconventional high power transmitter. First we noticed there are these two really tall antennas. You can see the shadow going clear off to here. Let me make it a little bigger. Okay, and this one actually looks funny, a different angle. It's not parallel to the other one. How odd is that? Or the satellite has that much parallax. That's strange. I guess that's strange anyway. So this is a really huge, tall, enormous antenna. And the interesting thing is, if we look at how it's built, it's not anything like a normal TV antenna. Let me zoom all the way in. Okay, now this, I believe, is a Haarp, one of the many Haarp antennas. And if it's not for Haarp, then it's just for communicating with satellites, or sorry, submarines on the other side of the Earth. But we can tell from the shadow of this guy, number one, here are these high voltage insulators coming off the side here. I'll zoom in just a little. And what I'm looking at here is the shadow. So the shadow is telling us what these things are. And they are some really high voltage insulators. And oddly, they get smaller as you get to the top, which means there's more high voltage at the bottom than at the top. And also, right here, if we look at the shadow of this thing right here, this is the high voltage feed line for the antenna. Here's a giant insulator that comes out of the ground, comes up on this pipe. Now I'm looking at the shadow right here. This is the shadow. This is the actual wire, the giant coax, heliax or high voltage coax. So the shadow shows us that it goes in there. So, but this is not even the most interesting feature. The most interesting feature is right at the top here. We see a spider web of radial cables. These are the radiating elements of the transmit tower. And we can see, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's probably 12, 14, or 16 of these radial wires coming out. Here, let's just trace one, this one here. And what we find at the end is a high voltage insulator. Before it can touch the ground, here's the insulator, right here. There's the insulator. So, in other words, this part down here is connected to ground, a giant block of concrete. But this side up here has a high voltage, high frequency on it. This is a Haarp transmitter, and a really big one. And over here we see another one. Here's another one right here. And another one over here. So it's the same insulator. Oh, this makes it easier to count the number of transmitter lines. Here's another one. So this is just the oddest damn antenna. And the shortwave guys know that you can actually buy a little antenna like this from Radio Shack. It's a real broadband antenna, and probably about 4 feet across, and pretty good for all kinds of frequencies, but it has pretty low gain, and it's omnidirectional. So the fact that there's two of these, there's one tower here, on zoom. Okay, there's one tower here, and then there's a twin tower right here, or I assume it's a twin. Oh my gosh. I haven't actually looked at this very closely. Let's have a look. Yep, it's a twin. And actually this one's easier to see, so I apologize. This is exactly the same. We zoom in the top, we see those little fine wires coming out, and we can actually count them here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there must be 16 of those radial wires. So you could actually have 8 separate channels to form a beam. And judging by the look of these insulators, like say this bottom one here, you know, maybe each one of these insulators is good for 50,000 volts, and maybe there's 6 of them there. So, you know, you might have 300 kilovolts on this. This one's easier to see. Maybe, just as a wild guess, maybe 50 kV. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 250,000 volts, possibly on this tower itself. And, you know, that would be kind of odd to put... what makes more sense is that they're insulated from the tower because they are radiating elements, so that these brace wires are actually high voltage. In fact, that's what's happening here, because we see the brace wires have insulators on them. So these brace wires are not just for bracing the tower, they are radiators. They're driven elements in this antenna system. So yeah, this is either a submarine communication system or a Haarp transmitter, or both actually. So that's why you have hurricanes approaching the big island of Hawaii suddenly turn off, completely shut down, and they're not even a hurricane anymore. So this is another thing that's interesting here is the names of the streets. We have Morse Street, Hertz Loop, Edison Street, Radio Road, Marconi Street, here's Edison Street. Notice they didn't mention Nikola Tesla. It should all be named after Tesla. Even Marconi stole Tesla's radio patent. So what they're saying here with all these radio pioneer names is that we are also radio pioneers, and these two towers are our display. So this is a radio pioneer area, and I really think that these strange looking things here, that they look like, well, firstly, there is a fence around some of these bunkers here. So those could be underground storage for nukes, because there is a big fence around these. But these guys up here next to the mountain, there's no fence. There's no fence. But these could be elements, radiator elements of a Haarp array. Because the Haarp is such low frequency, it doesn't really have to be well above ground or whatever. It could be sort of near the ground, maybe even underground, I don't know. But that's just too odd. Very, very odd. I mean, I don't see any big fence here. I see mountains. So, I would say count your blessings, Hawaii, that they do have a system to protect you from hurricanes. So, you know, this is another beneficial use of Haarp. They're few and far between, but it's such a powerful technology that it does have beneficial uses. So why not make this public? This technology should be public, and then the American taxpayer will be happy to support something. You know, it's kind of like plywood over your windows when you have a hurricane. But this is more elaborate, and we're not going to make plywood a big secret, so why should this be secret? It's because they're using it for negative and evil and greedy purposes as well. Well, those need to stop, and this whole thing needs to be declassified. That's my opinion, and maybe you can agree after you see the big picture like I do a little bit. Yeah, see, these are mountains. I don't see any dang. Very odd. Very odd. I don't see any fencing. It's hard to fence over a mountain, in case you hadn't noticed. Okay, thanks for watching.